Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is your well-rounded math teacher, Mr. Bakar, and we are going to go over section 5.3, factoring trinomials. But we're going to start off with this problem here, kind of warm up and review graphing quadratics, and that's what we're talking about right here. It says expand the quadratic. Well, that just means multiply. You can see there's parentheses there. We're going to multiply that and get rid of the parentheses. A couple different ways to multiply it. You can use the box method. I know some of you prefer the box method, so I'm going to look at that method first here. And you just have 2 rows and 2 columns because it's x minus 4. We'll do that across the top, and x plus 2 along the side here. And then we just multiply across and up and down here. So I'm going to take this row right here and multiply it by this column. Well, that's x times x, or x squared. I'm going to take that same row times the second column, and that's x times negative 4, or negative 4x. Now we're going to do the bottom row here times the first column, and that's x times 2, or 2x. And then the bottom row times the second column there, so that's negative 4 times 2, that's negative 8. Now we just kind of combine like terms and write it out. These two terms are both x terms, so I'm going to combine those together. But the biggest term, highest degree, or power, I guess, would be the x squared. And then the x terms, that negative 4x plus 2x, that's negative 2x. And then we got just the negative 8 is left. And that's what it would be right there. And that's going to be y equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. The other way you could do it, I think it was x minus 4 times x plus 2, is just distributive property twice. Some people call it FOIL. I'm just going to say I'm going to multiply x times x first. You multiply each term in here by each term in this binomial. X times x is x squared, and then x times the 2 also. So that's going to give me plus 2x. Then we take this negative 4 and multiply it by both terms. Negative 4 times x is minus 4x. And then negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. So combining like terms, these two terms are like terms. We kind of added them up in the box method too. X squared minus 2x. The 2 plus the negative 4 is negative 2x minus 8. And that's y equals. Okay? So y equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. And this is in standard form. Standard form, once again, is just y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So a in this case is just 1. There's nothing in front of there, so that's a 1x squared. B is in front of the x term, that's negative 2. And then c equals the negative 8. Okay, so we can use this now to find out what we need so we can graph this bad boy. First thing is the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, and that's where x is always equal to 0. So if we plugged in 0 for our x terms right here and right here, it'd be y equals 0x, or 0 squared, sorry, minus 2 times 0 minus 8. Well, these both cancel out to 0, so you just get y equals negative 8. And there you go. Axis symmetry, well, that's where we use that little formula, x equals negative b all over 2a. Well, negative b would be the opposite of b, so if b is negative 2, I'm going to say that's positive 2 over 2 times a, and a is 1. So 2 over 2, or 1. So my axis symmetry, x equals 1. And we're going to graph that in there first right away. We'll do it in red here. And right where x equals 1. So I'm just going to, oops, I got the highlighter on. I actually want that, yep. There is my axis of symmetry. That's the AOS, and that's x equals 1. Just a vertical line at x equals 1. going back here now. So my vertex is on that axis of symmetry, so my x is 1. We have to find the y now, and that's where you just plug in that 1 right there for x and solve for y. So y equals, using the quadratic that we had up here, 1x squared, so it's just 1 for the x squared, minus 2 times 1 minus 8. Well, 1 squared is 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2 minus 8. This is 1 minus 10, or negative 9. So it's 1, negative 9. So graphing some points here. Well, 1, negative 9, let's see, this is negative 6, 7, 8, 9 would be right about there. So that's my vertex. And I know it's positive x squared. We have that y equals positive 1x squared there. So I know it opens up. My vertex, I can graph that, or my y-intercept was 0, negative 8. So 7, 8 would be right about there. Flip that over the axis of symmetry, and there we go. If you graph this on Desmos, I didn't do a very good job graphing this. You can see that your zeros are where it crosses the x-axis. It's actually negative 4 and, or positive 4 and negative 2. And that's how I'd probably find the zeros, just using Desmos. It's just where it crosses the x-axis. Okay? All right. So now we're going to get into factoring. Factoring quadratic expressions. We're factoring these trinomials. They're called general trinomials because they're of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So there's an x squared term, an x term, and then just a number. And you can see here I have an x squared, an x, and then just a number. And when we factor these, it's going to be two binomials, a product of two binomials. So we'll kind of get to that. There's a couple different methods you can use. There's, like we talked about the box method, you can use the reverse box method. And you can also use factoring by grouping. So we'll look at this first one. And the way we started out is this. You take the number in front of your x squared, your a term, which is 1, and you multiply it by the last term, which is 8. 1 times 8 is 8. And now we want factors of 8 that add up to this middle term in front of the x, which is 6. And I'll show you how that works in a minute. So factors of 8, you could have 1 times 8, 2 times 4, and that's pretty much it. Now, the two factors of 8 that'll add up to 6 are 2 and 4. So I'm going to put a 2 here and a 4 here. Now the significance, once again, they multiply to get 8, but they add up to get 6. And they add up to actually 6x. So we're dealing with 2x and 4x here, but 2 and 4 were the two numbers that we came up with. So here's the reverse box method. Okay. Plug the numbers in the box. Well, the numbers that we have are x squared, 6x, and 8. So x squared goes in the upper left-hand corner, and the last, just the number, goes in the lower right. The 6x is actually these two terms right here that we found, the 2x and the 4x, but it doesn't matter where you put those. 2x, and we'll go 4x. Okay, and so the reverse is this. I always kind of start out with this top column and find the greatest common factor of x squared and 2x. In other words, what will go into both of them. The only thing that goes into both of them is x. And then I find these two numbers on top, because I'm going to take x times what will give me the x squared. Well, that's another x. And you can see x times x is this x squared. And then x times what will give me this 2x. Well, that's 2. So my first factor is x plus 2. The other one is going to be right here. We already know it's going to be x, but I have to find this number. And this number is what I'm going to multiply by x and the 2 here to get 4x and 8. Well, what times x is going to give you 4x. Well, that is 4. So I'm going to put a 4 right there. And it's a positive 4. And then 4 times 2 is this 8 right here. So my other factor is x plus 4. So x plus 2 and x plus 4 are the factors of x squared plus 6x plus 8. That's one way to do it, and that's called the reverse box method. So I'll just put box over here. The other method that we're going to use is grouping. Grouping works like this. We're going to take these three terms right here and turn them into 4 and factor it from there. So the first term is actually x squared. Then we get plus, here's my 6x, the 2x plus the 4x, and then plus that last term, 8. And we group these two together and these two together. And this is called grouping, but we use a little GCF with it. In other words, you look at your two sets of binomials here. What do these two terms have in common? Well, they have an x. So I'm going to take an x out. So dividing an x out of both of these, well, this is pretty easy. I'd be left with 2, so I'm going to put a 2 there. X squared divided by x, well, that's just going to give me x right there. So that's done. Now I'll do grouping here. These two are divisible both by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is just going to give me x. So I'm taking the 4 out, but I'm left with an x. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So the ones they have in common, you have an x plus 2, that's going to be one of my factors. And the other factor is what you're actually multiplying that x plus 2 by, and that's x right here and 4 right here. So x plus 2 and x plus 4 are my factors. They're in the same order, but sometimes you'll get x plus 4 first and x plus 2 right here. So, and that's factored. So if you multiply them together using the box method, kind of instead of the reverse box method or distributive property twice, this is the trinomial that you would get. Okay? So let's go to example 2 here. Kind of doing the same thing. Start out with 1x squared. Now, you should check GCF right away, but the x squared, the negative 5x, and the negative 24, those three terms have nothing in common. So I'm going to jump right into, hey, I see an x squared, an x, and then this number 24 here. So I'm going to do either the reverse box method or grouping, but I'm going to start with the x method to find those other two terms. So take 1 and multiply it by 24, actually negative 24, and I get negative 24. Now on factors negative 24 that add up to negative 5. So my factors, now it's negative 24, so one of my factors has to be positive, the other one has to be negative. I could use 1 and 24, probably not going to work. The difference is 23. 2 and 12, difference is 10. 3 and 8, well, the difference there is 5, so that will probably work. And I think I'm going to go with positive 3 and negative 8. So I got 3 and negative 8. Now, they multiply to get negative 24, but they do add up to negative 5. So we're good there. 3x and negative 8x. So I'm going to use reverse box method with these two numbers for the negative 5x, and then we're going to start out with x squared and negative 24. So here's my little box method, reverse box method. X squared, negative 24, and then take your 3x, I'll put that up here, and take my negative 8x, I'll stick that right there. Okay. So I always start with this first column and see what they have in common. They both have an x in common, so I'm going to take that out and put it right there. Now, what two terms would I have to put here to multiply by x to get, first of all, x squared? Well, x times x is x squared, and x times 3 is going to give me this 3x right here. So my first factor is x plus 3. My other factor was going to be the finish of this left-hand side here. What am I going to multiply by this top x to get negative 8x? And that's going to be negative 8. So that's my other factor, x minus 8. And you can see this negative 8 right here times positive 3 is going to give me negative 24. So this column times this row does give me negative 24, so it works. So those are my two factors. If I multiply those together, this is what I would get. I'd get x squared minus 5x minus 24. That's the reverse box method. Grouping, if you like doing the grouping method, I guess we would do this. X squared, first of all, and then turn this 5x, negative 5x into, I'll say, plus 3x and minus 8x minus the last term, which is this 24 right here. Just being careful. That negative goes with the 8x, so it's negative 8x. So greatest common factor for both of these. What can I pull out of x squared and 3x here? They both have an x, so I'm going to take an x out. So divide this by x and divide this by x. Well, I can see those cancel out, and I'm going to get 3. And then the x squared divided by x to the first, you subtract the exponents. 2 minus 1 is 1, so it's just x to the first or just x. Now, both of these are negative, and I want to get two positive numbers in the parentheses here, so I'm going to factor out a negative. These two terms have an 8, so I'm going to factor out a negative 8. Excuse me. I'm going to factor negative 8 out of both of them. 8 divided by 8 is 1. They're both negative, so that's just going to be positive x. And negative 24 divided by negative 8 is positive 3. So the first thing we have an x plus 3 for both of them. That's my first factor. And I'm multiplying it by x and negative 8. Those are my other two factors. And you can see they're the same as these ones. You don't have to do both methods. I'm just showing you both methods. You can choose whichever method kind of works best for you. Okay? Moving on to 3 here. Now what you should do, I kind of talked about this before, do all 3 terms have something in common? Like this term has an x and this term has an x, but 18 doesn't have an x, so I can't do that. Here I can take a 9 out of 9 and a 9 out of 18, but I can't take a 9 out of x squared. So there is no greatest common factor. So all I'm going to do here is factor it as a trinomial, okay? I'm going to take the number in front of x squared and multiply it by the last number, which is 18. So 1 times 18 is 18. And I want those factors to add up to negative 9. Okay, so how do you do that? How do you multiply two numbers to get a positive number but add them to get a negative number? They're both negative. So I could say negative 1 times negative 18. That doesn't work because that adds up to negative 19. Negative 2 times negative 9 adds up to negative 11. Negative 3 times negative 6. That does work. So negative 3 and negative 6. So they multiply to get 18, but they add up to negative 9. So they work. And I'm going to say 3x and negative 6x. Negative 3x and negative 6x. So box method here. Reverse box method. First term is x squared, and the last term is 18. These other two boxes are the terms that add up to negative 9x, and that we found that to be negative 3x and negative 6x. Okay? So, and I always start out this way. This column, the x squared and the negative 3x, they have an x in column. All these are kind of turning out to be very similar, and that's fine. So x times x is going to give me that x squared right here. And what I'm going to multiply by this x to get negative 3x, well, that's just negative 3. So guess what? That's my first factor. Then what I'm going to multiply x minus 3 by to get this negative 6x plus 18. Well, I think I need a negative 6 right here. Negative 6 times this x right here is negative 6x, and negative 6x times negative 3 to get this last column in this bottom row to give me that 18. Okay? So there we go. X minus 3 and x minus 6. That works. Okay? If you want to do the grouping method, so x squared minus 3x minus 6 plus 18. That'll work for me. So I am going to, group it, sorry. Remember that negative goes with the 6x, so that's negative 6x. These two terms, first two terms, I can take out an x. So dividing this by x and this by x, I'm going to get, taking that x out, I'm left with, well, here the x's cancel out, so I just get a minus 3. And x squared over x is just x. So I'm probably going to take a negative out of these two because I have a negative to begin with and a positive, and I want a positive and a negative for my last two terms. So what do I got? They have a 6 in common, so I'm going to factor out a negative 6. So dividing this by negative 6 and this by negative 6, well, 18 divided by negative 6 is negative 3. The negative 6's cancel out, and I'm left with an x. So these two terms are the same again, which I want. So it's x minus 3 times x minus 6. And there we go. And sometimes they'll come in a different order, like I might get x minus 6 and then x minus 3. Well, these two things are the same, so it doesn't really matter. Okay? So that's factoring. So our next one. Now this is a little bit different. I got x squared minus 4. Well, it's only two terms. Usually it's ax squared plus bx plus c. I have an x squared term, an x term, and a constant. Hey, you guys want to go in the living room? Yep. Anyway, this is going to be x squared. There's no x term, so I'm going to say plus 0x minus 4. So this is my general trinomial. Now, I'm not going to factor these two terms like this all the time. I'm just going to kind of show you how it works and then show you the little shortcut to go with it. So anyway, this is a 1. I'm going to multiply it by the negative 4. So I get negative 4, and I want my terms to add up to 0. I can use 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. Now remember, one of them is positive, one's negative, because I want to get negative 4. I would say negative 2 and positive 2 would work. So negative 2, positive 2, they multiply to get negative 4, and they add up to get 0. So if I'm going to use a little box method, actually I'm just going to do grouping here. You could do boxing if you want, but we're going to do grouping. I want to show you guys something. So it's x squared minus 2x plus 2x minus 4. Because these are my x terms that add up to this 0x right here. So if I do grouping, these two together and these two together, the first two I can take out an x. So it's going to be x times something. Well, if you divide these both by x, it looks like I got minus 2 for the second one. And then x divided by x squared, or x squared divided by x is just x. Plus, I think I can take a 2 out of both of these. 2's cancel out, and I'm left with x. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So x minus 2 is my first factor right there. They're in common. And what am I multiplying them by? I'm multiplying them by an x plus 2. So it's x minus 2 and x plus 2. The factors are the same, except one's positive, one's negative. And the reason this works out the way it does, if you were to multiply this out using distributive property twice, you'd have x times x is x squared, and x times 2 is 2x. And then multiply by negative 2, and I get negative 2x, and negative 2 times 2, and that's minus 4. So these two terms add up to 0 and cancel out. I'm left with x squared minus 4. And its factors are, they call them conjugates, x plus 2 and x minus 2. The key is this, x squared minus 4. Well, 4 is a perfect square. That's 2 times 2. And x is a perfect square. X squared actually is x times x. And if it's subtraction, it's x plus 2 and x minus 2. They always factor out to be that way if it's difference of perfect squares, and that's kind of the significance of that. If I had x squared, I'll say minus, 16. 16 is 4 times 4. So once again, this is difference of perfect squares because x squared is x times x. So I could just do my two binomials, x and x, 4 times 4. And it's plus and minus because I want to get negative 16. And remember, if I multiplied, I'd get negative 4x, positive 4x, and they would cancel out. So there wouldn't be any x term in the middle there. Okay? So that's just difference of perfect squares. That's kind of how that works. Okay, we got a couple more for you here. These ones are a little bit more complicated, but I think you'll be fine with them. And if you do have questions, don't be afraid to send me a message or something to ask questions. I can do a quick Google Meet with you. The significance here is this. Here we only have two terms. So it's kind of nice to start with this one. 18 is not a perfect square. 18, I can't say that's 9 times 9 because 9 times 9 is 81. But you should always check for GCF, greatest common factor. And if you look at these two, 18 and 2 are both divisible by 2, so I'm going to take a 2 out. If I divide this by 2, I'd be left with x squared. If I divide this by 2, I'd be left with minus 9. Now, you'd think, hey, I'm done. I did GCF. But 9 times 9, I'm sorry, 9 is a perfect square. That's 3 times 3. And you're subtracting it, so it would be plus 3 and minus 3. This is difference of perfect squares, okay? Because x squared is x times x. So I bring down your 2, and I'm just gonna do the shortcut method here. X and x, and that's gonna be minus 3 and plus 3. So we actually have 3 factors. 2 is one of my factors, and then this is a factor, and this is a factor. So that's greatest common factor, and then difference of squares. Okay? Difference of perfect squares is what you'd call it, but there we go. This one, now remember, if it's a trinomial and you're factoring trinomials, it's usually of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where you have an x squared, an x, and then no x term. Well, these 3 all have an x term, so we can definitely do greatest common factor here first. So I'm going to factor an x out of all of them. But I also noticed that 4, 16, and 48 are all divisible by 2. They're all even, but they're all divisible by 4. So my greatest common factor here is going to be, I can take a 4 out and an x. So 4x. I'm going to put 4x down here, and we're going to multiply it by whatever to get these 3 terms up here. So just dividing all of these by 4x to see what you would have left inside the parentheses there. Well, the 4's cancel out here. X cubed over x to the first 3 minus 1 is 2, so that's just going to be x squared. 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 16 4 times, so that's going to be 4x, because the x squared divided by x, you'd be left with an x there, so that's 4x. Here the x's cancel out, and I get negative 48 divided by 4. Well, 4 goes in there negative 12 times, so that's minus 12. So now I have this, 4x times x squared plus 4x minus 12. And now we have that form of ax squared plus bx plus c right here in the parentheses. So I'm going to factor that again. So this one's a little bit more, a little tougher, but You guys can do it. I'm not going to worry about the 4x till the end. I'm just going to worry about the 1x squared. I'm going to take that 1 and multiply it by negative 12. So we're going to do that little x method here, and I need them to add up to 4. It's negative 12, so one of these factors has to be positive, one has to be negative. So I can do 1 and 12, 2 and 6, or 3 and 4. Now, 2 and 6 have a difference of 4, so I think I went with negative 2 and positive 6. That would add up to this 4. So negative 2, positive 6. You multiply to get that negative 12, but you add them to get that positive 4. Sorry about that, add. And I think I'm just going to do the box method here. If you like grouping better, you would do grouping here. I'm not worried about the 4x till we get to the end, my final answer. So reverse box. Take your x squared and take your negative 12. And then the two terms we found add up to that 4x are negative 2x, and what do we got? 6x. So here's what I do. Top row there, x squared and negative 2x. What do they have in common? Well, just an x. And I know that x times x will give me this x squared. And negative 2 times this x will give me the negative 2x. So that's my first factor, 2x. Or I'm sorry, x minus 2. Okay? But what are we going to multiply x by and negative 2 by to get these two terms, 6x and negative 12x? Well, x times 6 would give me the 6x right here. And then this 6 times this column, which is the negative 2, will give me the negative 12. So these are my answers right here for this. So the 4x times x squared, hold on here, times x squared plus 4x minus 12. Well, this is 4x, and this factors down to these two binomials, these two factors, x minus 2 and x plus, that's a positive 6 right there, x plus 6. So this is the 5-3 lesson on factoring trinomials. If you have any questions, send me a message. Otherwise, you can get going on your worksheet and then make sure you submit that bad boy.